In 1957, Rosenblatt, using some of the previous work of 1940s, decided to create what is called perceptrons. Today we'll call them artificial neurons. Because computers were so expensive and being created using these valves, he could not create very large artificial neural networks. So his neural network, which began to be called shallow network, had input nodes, it had output nodes, and the middle nodes were very much like neurons. They had all the inputs coming in, some weights on the edges, which would be trained, and they would fire if the total signal exceeds a particular threshold. So these later on would be called single layer neurons, perceptrons, or single layer artificial neurons or neural networks. So you have one vertex here, where variable center or the input center, one is the output, and you have one hidden layer which is doing the computation. Unfortunately, the hidden layer, since it's only one, it can do only so much, but he was still able to show that you can at least do classification using a line separating red points and blue points and so on. It fires if the total weight on the incoming edges actually exceeds a specific potential or threshold. So these, later on, as I said, got to be called as shallow networks because they have only one layer. Russians, very soon, so this is 1957, in 1965, Russians actually created multi-layer perceptrons which became deep learning networks. A deep learning network, like this one, is one which has more than one internal layer, more than one hidden layer. It's not because it's thinking deep. We actually do not know how deep learning networks think. So that's out of question about deep thinking, but about the depth of the network. So again, shallow networks, one hidden layer, deep learning networks, more than two or more hidden layers. How many neurons do humans have? 86 billion neurons. How many connections do we have? Connections are the edges which are connecting these neurons. 1,000 trillion. So 1 million times billion synapses. And sometimes you have 8 layers, sometimes like from eye to the brain. In many of those algorithms, you have 8 layers. Sometimes you will have as much as 80 layers. Sometimes you don't know how many layers we have.